Hi, I'm Simon, and this is Kim.
So you might think it's unlikely that you'll be sailing along and happen upon a couple people drowning. I would have thought that it's probably not a normal occurrence, but it happened to us a few months ago.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
So stay tuned to hear the full story.
Before we carry on, if you're thinking about doing this lifestyle, the cruising lifestyle, which we think is absolutely fantastic, why don't you subscribe to our channel? And everything we produce is for helping people like you to go and do our lifestyle and get out sailing.
Okay, so we're going to back up here a little bit and just explain how we started off, because it all kind of comes together. When we were in England, we had a boat on the south coast that was in a place called Port Solent, and we used to sail in the Solent. And so that was like our first kind of experience with owning our own boat and sailing around. We had it for 2 years. Now, when we went out, which was pretty much every weekend, and from time to time we'd go out for a week or so, and every single time we went out, there was at least a mayday or a pan-pan, sometimes both. So that stretch of waterway is very busy. There's hovercrafts, there's tankers, there's sailboats, there's motorboats, there's tons of boats in the area. And so I kind of thought it was normal for there to be maydays, like a lot of maydays or a lot of pan-pans. So before we got onto Britican, I thought, oh my gosh, what happens if we have to do a mayday? Will we know what to say on the radio? Will we know what procedure? And I was thinking, if we're going to sail around the world, this is stuff that's really important to know. Before we got on Britican, I researched and tried to find like a list or a template for how to make mayday call, pan security, and just like a little bit more knowledge about the VHF radio. Now, both Simon and I took the class, a VHF radio class, and so I learned how to use the radio and I learned how to make the call. But the thing is, you're probably ever going to make a mayday call, maybe, I don't know, not too often,
well,
right?
Hopefully
never.
But maybe once.
Yeah, so it's not something you retain. So you really need some kind of prompt to tell you how to do it, because there is a very specific way of doing it. And the reason there's a specific way is because you need to help whatever situation. You need to do it quickly, calmly, and in a manner that the Coast Guard or whoever else is communicating with you can get the right information quickly. So after not finding any checklists or anything, I decided to make my own. We have on board here, I've got it here, it's just, they're laminated, and so I've got sending a mayday, sending a pan, a security, a mayday relay, medical advice, and canceling a VHF alert. So I created these in 2013. Not once did I use them until 3 months ago, and I am so thankful that it was sitting right in the desk where it always is, because I went downstairs and had to use it. And I'm like shaking now because it's coming back to me.
Yeah.
It's really a scary situation. So I'll hand it over to Simon to just explain like what happened 3 months ago.
Okay, so we had some guests on doing a Britican experience, and it was our first day out. And we were on the dock. They'd come on, they'd spent one night, and then the next morning I went through the boat briefings, and that is explaining...
Yeah, I've got it here.
You got it there?
Yeah, so we've got like a boat briefing document.
A boat briefing document, and that goes through the whole safety procedure on a boat, walking around, walking downstairs, and all the different things that we need to do. Because the boat's not moving, but when the boat is sailing along, you need to take your time. Don't rush about. So we put the engine room extractor fan. Also on that is the Man Overboard Drill. And so I explained what all the equipment that we have on Britican, and I explained how to use it, and what happens is if one of us goes overboard. And I was explaining that on, never thinking I'll be using it an hour later.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy. Because we go through this briefing all the time, and I always say, oh, don't worry, that will never happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had the Bernie family with us, and we had Robert and Dorothy and 2 beautiful girls. And so what we did was, when we headed out, we did what we normally always do. We pull in the lines, we pull off the fenders, so we bring them to the back of the boat. As Simon's taking us out of the channel, everybody's kind of getting the boat cleaned up. and Sienna was teaching the girls how to deflate the fenders. Everything was fine, you know, beautiful sunny day. Everything was just normal. And we decided to only get our head sail, our jib out, because we weren't going very far. So Simon then handed the helm over to Robert. We were sitting there, and, you know, everybody's like maybe slightly nervous because it's the first day out, and these guys were paying guests. So, you know, the first day, it's like we've never really met them before except through emails. So everybody's, you know, smiling and anticipating what the day is going to bring. And in our minds, we were going to, you know, sail for a little while and then anchor and go swimming or snorkeling. And then that's when it happened.
Yeah, so what happened was we were sailing. We were only going to go about 3 or 4 miles. That's why we only got the headsail out. And we were going to go to a place where we pick up a mooring board. We're going to go snorkeling the sculpture park here, which is fantastic. The wind suddenly changed direction, and Robert was, instead of pulling the sail in, he just carried on keeping the sail out, which is a good thing for these two guys. But I was thinking, I wonder why he's doing that. I'll just let him do it. He has sailed before. He's done dinghy sailing, so I'll just let him get in. I don't want to step on his toes or anything. So we're going along, and he's on the helm, and suddenly goes, "There's man in the water," and I'm, where? And as we looked down, right by the bow of the boat was these two heads just coming past us, and they screaming, "Help, help!" And we'd heard voices before, but we just thought it was, you know, people's voices. You know, it's not something. And I just said, "Don't worry, we're coming back for you." So everyone had just been told what to do an hour earlier. I said, "Right."
Yeah.
I took over the helm, switched on the engine, got the headsail in, and we turned around to get him. And Robert was pointing to where they were so he could tell them. And we were still talking to him and shouting to him and said, "We're coming to get you." So we turned the boat around. We went upwind of them, and then we slowly came down to them nicely. And they swam to the back of the boat. We dropped the ladder off the back of the boat. We got them on the boat. One of them was a good swimmer and the other one was not a good swimmer, and they were holding on to a cooler box,
like a 6-pack cool box.
Yeah, and one of them was like here, and I reckon another 5 minutes and we'd have lost him.
Yeah.
And so we got them on board, and bless them, they both were fighting to get up on the ladder because they were both really, really scared. But we got them on there, got them a towel, asked if they were all right, asking them if they, you know, how long they'd been in the water. Was there anybody else? Was there, you know, was it just the two of them? It was just the two of them. One of them goes, "Can you get my car keys? They're in a bag over there, and I can't drive back."
And he could see the bag floating.
Yeah, so we rescued them two and the car keys in the bag.
Yeah.
I remember when I got onto the engine, Kim goes, "Shall I do a mayday?" I went, "Yes, do a mayday."
Yeah.
And then
Kim, I grabbed the thing, and at first, the first like 30 seconds, I was in shock because at first I thought, why are these people out here swimming? Because we were maybe how many miles off land? 1.5 miles, 2 miles.
I
mean, we were too far for them to ever swim to land, and it's like my brain couldn't calculate. And then I realized, oh my gosh, something happened. And then also when I looked around, I could see stuff floating in the water. So I realized they must have been on a boat, or, you know, and it's capsized. So I went down and I flipped through. I've got Mayday on the top one here. And I read the checklist of what to do. I took a deep breath, and then I started saying, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday." And gosh, again, I'm shaking. It was really scary. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I didn't say the Latin longitude because we were at a very touristy destination spot. So I just said, you know, we're at the sculpture park, a mile off the sculpture park. Explain the nature of the distress. I said that we see 2 people in the water. We had no idea if it was more. And as soon as I did the Mayday, I had 3 boats calling saying they all could see us and they were turning around to come to us. And then I had 3 other boats that were in the vicinity coordinating to put boats in the water, get boats out there to form a rescue party. Because we really didn't know if it could have been like a dive company or something. So at first, you know, it was very scary. And although we were right next to the casualties and we knew we could get them on board, most likely, we didn't know how many were there. So I thought, let's put the Mayday out. And I'm really happy to say so many people responded.
Yeah.
And then we kept communicating as and when we got more information. Because as soon as we could talk to the guys in the water, we asked, are there more of you? And they said, no, it's just us two. So we could concentrate completely on saving them. But yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So when the guys were on, we went, what happened? And basically they were in an 8-foot rowing boat. And what they did was they put their anchor out and to go fishing in this bay. And they were all at the back of their boat looking out to sea, had their anchor out. But unbeknown to them, the anchor didn't work. And it dragged out and then was swinging in. And they were happily going out in the same direction. And they realised, then suddenly the wave, a bit more wavy, and they turned around and realised that they were away. So both of them went to go and grab the anchor because that's what they thought, the anchor wasn't working. They both went to the bow of the boat and flipped, and then just flipped it over. And flipped over. And so they were in the water, and then they saw us sailing roughly towards them, but we were actually going to miss them. And they were shouting at us, and that was what we heard. And then the wind changed. And then Robert
had to go out further.
Robert had to come out, which absolutely went straight past them. We must have missed them by about 4. The bow missed them by about 4 feet.
Yeah, if that wind change didn't happen, and if Simon was at the helm, he would have maybe trimmed the sail instead of heading out. So when you wonder if miracles happen, it was definitely a miracle for these two guys.
Yeah.
Because we happened to be there at the right moment. And if you looked around, there was like no other boats in the vicinity. Yeah. And these guys weren't going to last too much longer.
No, well, definitely one of them wasn't. We got them on board. We wrapped them up, made sure they were all right.
The girls got them granola bars and some water.
And when I was a PE officer in the prison service, I taught lifeguard, so I knew about seawater and secondary drowning. So I talked to them and explained them about. They have to be careful, especially the pair of them have to be careful. No alcohol, even though it was Independence Day for Grenada, so it's a bit of a party. So you shouldn't be drinking alcohol, and they're not allowed to be on their own for 24 hours because the water they can actually drown again, especially at night time when they're asleep. So they were all relieved and happy, and they gave us all hugs and
and Simon called. Well, we called the Coast Guard several times, but they never answered.
They never answered. So I then radioed Port Louis, where we just left, saying that we were coming back in with 2 people, and they were worried that they might be
like refugees
or anything. So we had to go into the office. But before I did that, I told Kim to do a security and tell them that there is a hazard in the water because the boat was still floating. It was just floating about that much. It was capsized, and I said, a boat going along there could hit it and do some damage to their boat. So then Kim did a security.
So again, I pulled out my list, which is my lists, which are very handy. I hope I never have to use them again. But it was just fantastic because everybody in the area was really happy to hear the conclusion and also to be notified of a navigational hazard. Yeah. And it was, in the end, it all worked out really well. It almost was staged when you look back on it. And it's really funny because Dorothy, who was with us, when she started out, she wasn't too keen on the whole sailing lifestyle. And I think she said, did you guys, plan this? Yeah. Because it just seemed too perfect of a learning experience. And we were like, no, we did not plan this. We would never plan anything like this. So it was great for, the family to see it. It was great for all of us to work for a team and the girls to be a part of saving lives. Yeah. Because these guys, they probably, were not going to last. No.
And remember, a couple of weeks later, the sailing school.
Yeah.
There was a local sailing school heard this, and they spoke to you, didn't they? Emailed you?
They sent me a thing, I think, on Instagram or Facebook saying we overheard the whole thing, and it was great because we had a class on board, and so they heard a real live Mayday happen, and you did it perfect. So I was like, oh, cool.
Well done, Kim.
Yeah.
Do you want to finish off the story with the 2 guys? Or not?
Yeah.
So we we'd got back onto the dock that we'd just left an hour earlier, and all the local
customs
and immigration came down, and the dock hands came down to help us out, and came on, and they were congratulating us, and as we went into the customs and excise and immigration office, and they asked quite a lot of questions to the local guys that we saved to make sure they are who they were and everything like that, and then they congratulated Britican and for what we did, but it's just part and parcel of being on the water. That's what you do, isn't it?
I think what's important to realize is you have no idea when you get on a boat what situation you're going to be in. We never expected to find two guys floating in the middle of the sea. I always in my mind thought, we really need to make sure we know this stuff if one of us falls off. Yeah. But you just don't know. And the Coast Guard's always out there saving, a boat or people or all sorts. So it's really important that you, as the captain of the boat, know how this all works, and then you brief your passengers, whether they're guests or crew, family. You brief them on the procedures that you follow, and then hopefully it just doesn't happen and you don't have to go through it. But we did. We had some guests last year, the Bakers, and they wanted to learn how to do man overboard procedures. Like if somebody fell off the boat, how do you retrieve them? So we have a video on that if you want to watch that. We were throwing, I think, Jimmy, our fender.
Jimmy the fender.
Yeah, our fender, we'd throw it overboard, and then we'd have to retrieve the fender. Well done! You got Jimmy!
We saved Jimmy!
So if you want a really good procedure on how to pick up a fender, watch that video. I feel like I just have to really harp on about how important safety is, because when you get out on the sea, there's not necessarily going to be tons of people around to help you. Yeah. And
you can't pull over to the side of the road and
call AAA.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the last video and this video and upcoming videos, we do talk a lot about the importance of checklists. They help you to be organized. They teach you procedures. They make sure that you don't miss out something. They help with delegation and with saving lives. It is so important to have have things handy in emergencies. And then at other times, it's important to make sure you check everything. You can't do an engine check and forget the oil. When we take the boat out of the water every year, I can't remember everything that we have to do. And if you miss one step, it could be a disaster. So we've created a 2-page document. It's free. It's a suggested checklist for sailors. So I will leave a link at the end of the video and down below. And if you're going to start out and get into boating, make sure you create your own checklists. Definitely, if nothing else, have a Mayday script. Pin it under your nav table so it's next to the radio, and everyone that gets on board, you explain to them where it is and how to use the radio.
Yeah.
This stuff is real important.
We've been sailing 6 years, and Kim knows this, but when you're in a panic situation and there's life and death, it can all go out the window. So just reading something off really helps you.
Yeah.
Should we say goodbye?
I guess so.
All right.
Bye. If you're unsure of what checklists you may or may not need or want on your boat, download our free checklist. It's called Suggested Checklists for Sailors. Getting the checklist will enable you to consider which checklist will help you to make your cruising life more enjoyable.